So for step 25, attaching the rear gearbox, we actually are going to be doing two steps here. One obviously is attaching the gearbox to the chassis, but the other thing is connecting the motor leads to the ESC. Now, there's something I want to show you on that, so we'll get to that in a minute. So first of all, let's just get this gearbox attached to the chassis. And those are the 4 screws that we're going to need. And then I'm going to show you something with the ESC, because it's something you're going to need to know to make sure you don't make any errors or create any other problems when you're connecting those cables. Okay, so if we take a look at the chassis first, you can see that there are the 4 holes. There's 2 here and 2 here. And the way that gearbox is going to fit is that from the top, 2 screws are going to go into the chassis, and from the bottom, 2 screws are going to go into the chassis. So if we grab our rear gearbox, you can see that that right there is fitting into this hole right here. So this is sitting just like that on top. It's a very cool design. So I'll just grab our 2 MA5s on the top, and I'll just start the screwing process. I'm not going to do too much with it. I just want to basically pre-fit, make sure that everything is sitting properly, which it is. So that's the top 2. I'm going to screw them in just a little bit more before I flip this over. Okay, so the 2 screws there. We're now going to flip this over, and you can see how that chassis is fitting into the red just on either side of the bottom of the gearbox. We'll grab one of the screws. And we'll screw that in. Not going all the way. Again, I just want to pre-fit things, make sure everything's sitting properly. Seems to be, so I'm just going to screw this one even more. And that one. Okay, now let's go back to the top. They screw in quite a ways before you feel any pull. There we go. That's in. That's in. Okay, so let me screw this in. Yep. Yep. And again, I'm just going to do one quick last test on this side. Yep. So there we have it. There is our rear gearbox attached to the chassis. This looks so cool. I love the red, and I just love that design. Very cool. Okay, so now let's take a look at the motor cables. So in this kit, the car came with a Tamiya TBLEO4S speed controller. But you may run into this, especially if this is a new build for you, that depending on what speed controller comes with the kit, you may notice there are 3 wires and there are only 2 wires on the motor. That's normal, because a lot of the speed controllers now are good for brushless or brushed systems. We're using a brushed motor. So what ends up happening is the orange one in this case is not being used. I'll just have to tighten it up and get it out of the way. It's not going to be used. So that's not an error. You haven't gone, oh no, where's that other wire supposed to go? On certain ESCs, you're going to have the 3 wires. One just has to go away and not be used. So what we're going to do is, and we can see they have a little chart here, that the red, orange, or yellow coming off the ESC is going into yellow or red in the motor. So we know that it's going to be a yellow to yellow connection. And then on the other side, it's saying black or blue. Well, this speed controller has a blue one. That is going to be on the negative side, and it's going to go into a green or black on the motor. Well, we know that this is green. So I will connect the blue to the green. So there we go. Now we'll have to move this out of the way, and in the next step it actually shows you zip tying these down, getting all your cables clear of everything else, which I'll do. But as a whole, this is just one thing to note. Depending on your speed controller, make sure you are plugging these cables in correctly, because if you do it the other way, it can damage the ESC. So on this one, we're not using the orange. On the speed controller that you may be using, it may be a different color altogether. Just make note of what goes where. So that means that we are actually finished with step 25. So we're going to move into step 26, which is attaching the front gearbox, and we're going to put the drive shaft in place.